Today I have a special treat. We'll be delving into the artwork and technique of anaglyph 3D comics circa 1950s with Joe Pedoto. He did the wonderful thing with Betty Page a few weeks ago. And then we have the Pandemic Playhouse Players will present a live rendition of The Man with Feet. Our first guest is Joe Pedoto.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me back. I'm going to talk a little bit about a man in the field, the comic field, who is not very well known. His name is Joe Kubert. Now, this very first slide image that you're seeing, this is not in 3D. This is a print mechanical for Page from a 1953 comic book called Captain 3D. And if you look on the left-hand side, you can see that there are actually 6 levels of depth. Each of those small panels, the vertical, rectangular panels on the left, represent a level of depth. You see in the upper left-hand corner, what's closest to the viewer is the panel borders and those 2 blocks of text, those captions. They used a special paper as the very background paper, diagonally down on the lower right-hand corner of the left side of your screen. You can see an image that looks like shadows and clouds and whatnot. Craft tint paper was white in appearance, and then it gave you 2 different duotones that you brushed on with a different solution. Solution 1 gave you a lighter one, solution 2 gave you a darker one. So this shows you how the artists would create on acetate and Bainbridge board and craft tint paper a 3D image from the 1950s. Now the next image is going to show you what this looked like combined in 3D as it was originally printed. So here we have this page of Captain 3D, 1953, and this is how it appeared when it was printed. Now, I got an aging copy of this. Of course, there's been some yellowing, but this is what it looks like today. And a lot of people have said, you know, what do we need you for? We got these great comics, we got these great artists. Well, the next image will show you my small contribution. I worked them over in Photoshop using techniques that I've learned from the anaglyph master, Jerry Marks. And in my opinion, these now look better on screen than they ever did when they were printed. You may disagree or agree. Let me get back to Joe Kubert. Joe Kubert passed away in 2012. He was 85 years old. He is considered by many the longest lived, continuously important contributor in the comic book field. Now, about this particular image, this shows you what a lot of companies did, comic companies did, was they took an old story, an existing story, and then redrew it for 3D. So here you can see a panel from the Batman comic as it originally was printed in the late 40s, and then in 53, how they redrew that. They left out some of the detail. You may notice also a streak of cloud that kind of cuts across the panel, goes through the first O of the word boom. This is a very common technique that they did. There was lots of wisps of clouds that they added into, or smoke, that they added into comics panels to give them another layer. Because originally, the panel on the left was not conceived as a 3D panel. So, and here is a rare version in Spanish from one of the stories that was printed in the 50s, reprinted again in 1966 when the TV Batman craze came on. But this is a Spanish language version, and again, this was redrawn from a pre-existing story. Joe Kubert was in the service in the early 50s, and he was stationed in Germany, and he saw magazines that had anaglyph printing in them. He had been a comic book artist from the age of 16. I have to give you a little background on Mighty Mouse. Joe Kubert's partner was Norman Maurer. He was married to the daughter of Mo Howard of the Three Stooges. They had a connection with St. John Publishing. St. John Publishing held the rights to Mighty Mouse. And when they came up with this proposal after he was back from the service, they quickly in a day drew up a Mighty Mouse page, Tor, a prehistoric character you'll see in a moment that was created by Joe Kubert, and a Three Stooges page. It was because of that family connection. And Mighty Mouse was the first 3D comic. At a time when comics were selling, like say a best-selling comic like Batman or Superman would sell, say, 300,000 copies in a month, the first printing of the Mighty Mouse 3D comic sold 1 million copies. Oh, I have to interrupt. One of my favorite images of all. This is the primitive caveman character, Tor, his monkey companion, Chi-Chi, and a 2-page spread, I think showing the brilliance and the genius of composition. That was the early art of Joe Kubert. He's probably worked in more genres and succeeded in more genres than any other single artist. I should also say he operated until his passing, is still in operation today, a school for comic art, and a couple of generations of young artists have been mentored by Kubert. As a matter of fact, both his sons are active and fan favorite artists today. Here's an example of a kids comic. There were 50 3D movies released by Hollywood in a 2.5 year period. In the 9-month fad of 3D comic books, there were 50 3D comics, and they ran across all genres. We won't see every genre here in the show, but I mentioned that the first printing of Mighty Mouse sold 1 million copies. The second printing sold 1.5 million copies. As I said, a successful print run then was 300,000 copies. There was, and the additional fact is, that was when a comic book was 10 cents for 32 pages. 32 pages of 3D cost you 25 cents. Oh, this is another one of my girlfriends. She's got a music career now. She's changed her last name to Perry, I think. Actually, no. This was a genre-creating comic by an Ohio artist named Bill Woggan. Bill Woggan's idea was to combine pin-ups and leg art and curvy, pretty girls, which boys liked, and fashion, which young girls like. I don't know how visible it is to you on the screen, but at the very bottom of that panel, all of the outfits, the shoes, the hairstyle, and whatnot were sent in by contributors. And this was one of the great gimmicks in this comic that prompted additional engagement. Sometimes even boys contribute, perhaps some young fashion designers. But yes, Bill Woggan created that. Now here's something from a children's cartoon show. It's called Rudy Kazooie, and it's the one example that I'll be showing you today of a photo comic done in the 50s. There were 2 done in this style, as far as I'm aware. They actually got kids, they put paper mache heads on them, and they used puppetry, and they shot it in 3D. I don't think it's as effective as the drawn 3D, but again, they wanted to make it as faithful as possible to this television kid show. Another one was called Fluky Luke. As a side note to comic book sales, if in the 50s 300,000 a month was considered big sales, and that comic was not going to be canceled, that figure has dropped down to 50,000 copies a month today. This is an example from the romance genre. I thought this was a particularly good and strong example of the 3D separation. While you're looking at this, remember back to that very first image. Remember those 6 different stages that all had to be drawn. They had to be inked on an acetate. It was actually animation acetate. It wasn't easy to ink on. Then areas that overlapped had to be opaque on the back, much the same way as which color was put into animation cells on the back. A lot of this really came from Kubert's knowledge of how contemporary animation was being done in the 40s and 50s, and he adapted these techniques. He actually patented it along with his partner, Norman Maurer. They called it 3D Illusterio. And for a short time, the money was rolling in. The first thing they did with their profits was they each bought themselves a new Buick. But the profits were very short-lived. Here, I think, is an excellent splash page from a Western. Again, I think there's something in comics art called spotting the blacks. I think this is an excellent example. Spotting the blacks, judicious use of dark tones, very dark shading, or absolute black in comic book art is a skill that not all artists, professional artists, really master. There are some who are geniuses at it, like Alex Toth, and he literally creates his image from shadow. But here, I think you see a pretty good example of effective layout. Different tones, even in a black and white, anaglyph image, giving you a real sense of depth. I think this is a particularly and now, this one took a long time to restore, but it was one of my personal favorites. The other one, Joe Cooper called it Panorama. Here it's giant 3D orama. It was printed in color as the cover and back cover of this book. But again, I think that while there were some substandard 3D comics, not all of them are at the level of some of the examples I'm showing you here. I think this is a spectacular example of the hard work that went into largely unsung artists. They were doing piecework. They were paid a flat page rate. They got paid a little more because it was a lot more work to do 3D. I don't think they were ever truly compensated fairly for what they contributed to the bottom lines of their companies, or in the case of just popular culture. Comic books that I bought for 10 cents as a kid are now $200 billion movies. We've come a very long way. Here's another, I think, wonderful example of a 2-page spread. Again, 3D orama. This was the Harvey Comics term, and I think absolutely beautiful use of that craft tint dual tone board on the background. That picture, some of the older members of the audience may remember that was a president. His name was Roosevelt. There was a thing called World War II. Not that you need to know any of that to appreciate this image. I love the way that plane is coming right out at you. So I tried to pick some of the greatest hits, along with kind of showing you the broad range. We mostly know comics as superhero comics. So back in the 50s, there were all kinds of comics. Now, this is something I dropped in because last week there was some discussion about depth maps that are generated spontaneously for creating 3D and video. Well, in Photoshop, there's a technique of creating a black and white, a grayscale depth map, and then applying those values to make a 3D image. So this is the one image. This is not from the 1950s. This is from 2003. This is a full page from the comic book of The Walking Dead, art by Terry Moore. This was a scene where the lead character opens the door in a hospital to see how infected the hospital is. And all of this was done with the depth map mapping technique of creating 3D. I just want to throw an example of work that I've actually done. The other ones were restorations. This is actually 3D by me. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I sincerely want to send my thanks out to everybody who worked so hard. You don't know how hard they worked to get all this stuff done and put it together as skillfully as they do. So my thanks to Dave and Jim and John. Hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you'll invite me back. Here's another picture of me without my beard and with my other girlfriend, Marilyn Monroe. Actually, of course, that's not me. That's the famous gossip columnist, Walter Winchell. If you don't know him as a gossip columnist, you might know him as a voiceover artist. If any of the older members of the audience might remember a television show called The Untouchables, starring Robert Stack as Elliot Ness, the narrator of that show was the bald man in this photo, Walter Winchell. Frank Nitti, the head of Chicago's crime family, came in that was his delivery. It was also in films and other TV programs. The one I remember most is from The Untouchables. John, everyone else, thank you so much for allowing me to show this.
Joe, that was fantastic. That was one great event. I want to thank you very much, and so does the crowd. And without further ado, I bring you the Pandemic Playhouse Players and its live performance of The Man with Feet. For you ham radio folks out there, that's Foxtrot, Echo, 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 Tango. Now take it away, narrator.
Who is the man with feet? For one man, a routine trip to the shoe store changed more than his shoes. It changed his life. That day, Jack Strider splurged on a pair of tasseled loafers, which were more handsome and better fitting than another that happened to be on sale. He wore his new shoes out of the store, confidently tossing his old treads into a trash bin by the door. Little did he know, a meteorite was moving toward his feet at meteoric speed. In less than a second, his new shoes were destroyed by a football-shaped but slightly larger rock from across the solar system. In association with the US government, a team of the world's best scientists and cobblers came together, not only to rescue Strider's loafers, but also to enhance them until they were the most scientifically advanced shoes in the world. Now, Jack wears his shoes to fight crime, and not just shoe-related crime, all kinds of crime. And they call him the Man with Feet, which is an acronym for footwear-based, electronically engineered emulation technology, though friends still call him Jack for the most part. No missions requiring the unique capabilities of F.E.E.T had come into Shoe Lab for quite some time. The hum of the computer consoles and the occasional beep or buzz were the only sounds to be heard. Dr. Amelia Swerner had wrapped up her solar-powered moccasin experiments and was now enjoying a chess match against F.E.E.T's powerful and remarkably breathable insole-mounted computer. Jack was relaxing with a newspaper when something in a photograph caught his eye.
Hey, I recognize this guy.
Dr. Swerner and F.E.E.T were too engaged in their game to hear. The compu-intelligent loafers extended one of his robotic tassels, picked up his bishop, and moved it diagonally across the board. Checkmate. Would you like to surrender, Dr. Swerner?
Okay, I'll forfeit. After all, I designed your electronic brain, so in a way, I win too.
They all laughed. Even F.E.E.T, who was programmed to laugh at all of Dr. Swerner's jokes.
Dr. Swerner, I think I recognize this guy in the paper. Let's get Kincaid on the holocom screen.
As Jack grabbed F.E.E.T off the stool and put them on his feet, Dr. Swerner dialed the comm screen for Davis Kincaid at the Top Secret Agency Unit Bureau. Jack was surprised to see his boss appear playing a trombone.
Oh, you caught me practicing my big number for the AUB talent show. I came in second place last year. Well, in the trombone division, anyway.
Sounds fun. When's the show?
Come on, you know that's top secret. Do you know how many of our best men participate in that talent show? Well, if our enemies were able to infiltrate the ventriloquists alone, our nation's security would be sunk.
Jack showed his boss the familiar face lurking in the background of the front page photo.
Hey, I recognize the guy in the front. Duvier. Big into the beach leisure business. Made a mint selling those multicolored inflatable vinyl spheres you see kids playing with down at the shore. But the other guy, I don't know.
Jack was sure he'd seen the mystery man before. F.E.E.T got to work using his quadrochromatic stylus to enhance the photographs. In moments, F.E.E.T added a mustache to the man's face according to Jack's description, with astounding precision for a shoe. Enhancement complete. Facial hair profile as requested. Profile match. Flegm Sizigbo.
Flegm Zizibbo, the international arms pirate whose glitteranium ring we broke up a few years ago.
Right, Dr. Swerner. But Sizigbo got away. Luckily, AUB agents seized all of the glitteranium.
Well, about that, Jack. We didn't exactly get all of the glitteranium.
What? That's not what you told me.
Well, the fewer people who knew, the better. We didn't want to risk causing a panic.
How much glitteranium does Sizigbo have?
Enough to make 3 hugely destructive bombs.
But that means.
Yes, that's right. Enough glitteranium to make 5 somewhat destructive bombs.
Well, we can't let anyone find out just how somewhat destructive that is. Jack, get down to the Duvier factory and do some snooping. I think something a little fishy is happening at this beach ball party.
Jack Strider sprang into action. Forgetting that the hollow comm screen broadcasts in solid pseudomatter, he smacked his face right tele into Kincaid's trombone.
Ugh.
Oh.
After using F.E.E.E.T's integrated face scope to make sure his face was all right, Jack was on his way. Later, at the Duvier Beach Ball Factory, Fledgem Sizigbo was close to getting rid of his glitteranium stash. He opened his cylindrical safety case to show Artemide Duvier the highly unstable fuel.
There it is. 3 full cakes of glitteranium, just like I promised.
Very good, very good. After brunch tomorrow, we put Project Bravo into action.
Little did they know that Jack Strider, with help from F.E.E.E.T's sonocircuitry, was watching and listening from just outside. Little did Jack know, he was also being watched.
So when do I get my money?
Jack heard Fledgem ask. But before he heard Duvier's answer, someone pounced on him. Feet snapped into autonomous mode, leaping off Jack's feet and toward the guard who had attacked him. Though the man was strong and enraged about being attacked by a pair of empty loafers, he was ultimately no match for such highly advanced footwear. While F.E.E.E.T took care of the guard, Jack tried to pry open the lock on the service entrance with a charge guard. With the guard spooked and on the run, F.E.E.T quickly jumped back onto his partner's feet. Jack had been unable to get the door open with his charge card, so F.E.E.T grabbed the card out of Jack's hands and used it to open the lock. Jack sighed.
Oh, now I see what you did.
They snuck through the factory's dark hallways to Artemide Duvier's office. Jack dug through the Duvier files, looking for clues about Project Bravo. Just as he noticed that there was a folder missing between Project Brav-N and Project Brav-IP, F.E.E.T.'s alert light pulsed. Jack, we are not alone. Jack turned around to find a pretty young blonde woman hiding behind a fern. After Jack showed his AUB badge and explained that he was investigating Artemide Duvier, the woman identified herself as Simone Duvier, the Beach Ball King's daughter.
I also thought he was up to no good. I came to snoop around to see if it was something about the business, but it's worse. I think he's having an affair. Look.
She thrust the Project Bravo file in front of him. Curiously, the file contained only a list of women's names.
Isabel, Elsa, Alice, Rosa, Ella. Do any of those names mean anything to you?
Well, I know the name Isabel from a story my father used to tell me.
What was it? The story could be a clue.
Well, it was sort of a story. It goes like this. Knock, knock.
Who's the... Wait, I've heard that one. I doubt it's relevant.
Simone then introduced Jack to her dog, Marcel. Meanwhile, F.E.E.T tele-imaged the Project Bravo file back to AUB's computers. Jack figured that maybe one of Kincaid's ventriloquist pals would be able to decipher it. Who were these women? Was Duvier planning to hurt them? Did he even understand the massive power he now possessed? Suddenly, the door to the office swung open, hitting the wall with a slap. There appeared Fledgem Sizigbo, gun in hand. Simone threw her hands up and screamed, which sent little Marcel off and running. Jack pointed F.E.E.T toward the intruder, expecting the shoes to fire a laser or put up a force field. But almost as soon as F.E.E.T extended one of his tassel arms, it wilted like a wet noodle. A sad whir could be heard as F.E.E.T's soul lights flickered, crackled, and faded out. Smoke seeped out of the loafer's main loafing units.
Feet! What's wrong?
Zigbo lunged, his gun pressed into Jack's chest.
Stop talking to your shoes and get moving.
To be continued.